Hi, welcome to part 3 of the series for the Olivet Discourse. So if you go to the description below, there should be links to the PDFs. So one, see here, this is called the Olivet PDF. So we have all 3 Olivets from the Synoptic Gospels. So you got Matthew's version, you got Mark's version, you have Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke's version, Luke 21. Okay. So you have access to that, and then here's another PDF. This is what happened during those the destruction of the temple. A lot of prophecies are tied to. Alrighty, so that's one PDF, and these are all interactive, by the way. And this is another PDF timeline from 30 AD right here, when Jesus gave the Olivet Discourse, all the way to 70 AD. All right. This is just a simple timeline. Again, these are all interactive. So, all right. So as I mentioned, these are side by side. It's very required that you watch part 1 before you watch this one, because part 1 it gets us on the same page with the questions that the disciples had asked. All right. Too many people take what they've heard from the world of hearsay and bring it with them into the scriptures, and it ends up blocking them from seeing what's really going on. All right, they end up having major disconnects, as I pointed out in part 1. So what I'm getting at, if you go to the channel, Olivet Discourse, I'm going to open this here. There should be a part 1 and a part 2, and then this video here will be part 3. Okay, so yeah, so anyway, so let's zoom in here. So we got Matthew 24. Just to recap, they departed from the temple. Matthew 23, they were just walking through the temple, and then they departed from it. Now they're overlooking the temple and the buildings of the temple. So when Jesus said, "Not one stone will be left upon another," he's referring to the building of the temple. He's not referring to the Temple Mount. All right. So this immediately prompted them to question pertaining to the statement that Jesus just made. No disconnects here. Okay, they're not talking about a bodily return. They're talking about a judgment coming that has to do with the statement that Jesus just made. So it's important that again you watch part 1. If you go back to the Olivet Discourse playlist and you watch part 1. All right. So. And then if you click on this here, I give you the link to the PDF that had the history of the Jewish people judgment coming throughout the Old Testament. And anytime where it's underlined, you can click on it. So just like, say for example here, Ezekiel 7, you click on it, it'll give you the actual verse. And I encourage you to read the whole chapter. All right. I give you the exact verse where it surrounds. Okay? So what I want to look at is the judgment coming that's talked about based on Jesus' answer to disciples that pertain to their questions. Okay? And try to show you that they're not talking about bodily return, and it's not possible that this idea of bodily return that you hear from the world of hearsay. All right? So oftentimes when we take what we hear and we bring it in the scriptures and we superpose it into the scriptures, think they're not there because we have believed something that was false. Not only are we superposing the text what's not there, we're seeing things that are not there, we're not actually seeing what that text actually says. Alrighty? So I'm going to try to demonstrate that to you. So people who believe we talk about bodily return, there's nothing in here that's suggested. If you take a look at the actual passage where he gives the answer. So this is Matthew's version. Then if any man, this is Jesus speaking to the disciples, not to you in the 21st century, he's speaking to the disciples, all right, pertaining to talk about the destruction of the temple. Then if any man shall say unto you, lo, here's Christ, or there, believe it not. Okay, so he's over there or there, don't believe it. Alrighty? That is not a bodily return. Alrighty? If it's a bodily return, Jesus would have said, hey, I'll be appearing again on earth, but he said the complete opposite. Don't believe it. All right, believe it not. All right. Uh, So, so you see how when somebody believes in a bodily return, they're not seeing what the text is there. He said, don't believe it. So this is not a bodily return to the earth. All right. For there shall rise false Christ and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, so much that, if it were possible, they should see the very elect. Okay, so notice Jesus did not say you're going to have to discern between the false Christ and the real Christ, me. Okay, he did not say that. Alrighty. So again, this is not a bodily return. And then we continue on. Wherefore, if they shall say unto you, behold, he is in the desert, do not go forth. Again, this is not bodily return to the earth. Behold, he is in the secret chamber, believe it not. Again, this cannot be a bodily return. All right. For as the lightning cometh out of the east, shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. So this is very fast. All right. So the idea of a return, at least my understanding, a person comes back and they stick around a while. This is using lightning as a way to describe how fast it is, obviously. Okay. So, and then continue on. For wherever carcass is, there eagles we gather. So if you want to know he came in judgment, look at the dead bodies around you. Okay, eagles and vultures. Okay, and then continuing on. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. Okay, note it's in heaven or in the sky, depending on translation. Alrighty, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and glory. Now Jesus was speaking to the disciples when he said this, so they had tribes. Okay, he had the 12 tribes of Israel, and Jews at that time knew what tribe they were in. Okay, the Jews today have no idea what tribe they're in. Okay, so notice coming in the clouds of heaven. Again, it's still up there, not touched down to the earth. All right. And so that's it for Matthew's version. It's supposed to take place before the generation pass away. So let's go to Luke's version. Okay. And then if any man shall say to you, lo, here is Christ, or lo, he's there, to believe him not. Okay. Again, this could not possibly be a bodily return. Tell him, don't believe it. But Christ, false prophets shall rise, show signs and wonders, seduce, even the elect. Okay. And so there was a false prophet who claimed that Christ will deliver them out of the temple before it gets destroyed. Well, they believed them, and they end up getting destroyed. Okay? Again, this is not a bodily return to the earth. Okay? So, and then they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds. Again, not on the earth. Okay? So this is repeated over and over and over again, yet people see a bodily return here to the earth, and the text repeatedly says over and over, no, that's not what's going on. Alrighty, let's go to Luke's version, and then they shall see the Son of Man coming in a cloud. Again, not a bodily return. Alrighty, and so the sign of the Son of Man took place, and so a sign of Christ, and it took place in May 19th of 70 AD. That's when it happened. Alrighty, and so the whirlwind of chariots in the sky, horses and soldiers, and all likelihood Jesus was amongst them. Alright, and the reason for this was so that they're aware that this severe judgment is not a coincidence, it's a divine judgment. Alrighty, and when these things begin to come to pass, and look up, lift your head, for your redemption draweth nigh. Now this is after they fled. Okay, the Jewish people that came to Christ had already fled by this point. They fled right before the last Passover in the temple. It was in April, and so May was a little bit later than that. So this was shortly, roughly a few weeks, 3 or 4 weeks after they had fled. Alrighty, and then it said, "Look up, that you had for your redemption draw nigh." Okay, so in all likelihood, this was right after this occurred, because this here was actually where if you remember Paul writing to Romans 16, that Satan would be crushed underneath your feet shortly. That's what's going on here. Alrighty? And so shortly after that, now the darkness of Satan being out of the air, then finally, then the Spirit of Christ, the regeneration took place on a corporate scale. It's not something that you can see. It does not come with observation. Maybe their reaction, maybe, but it's not like some event. They're not flying up in the air, okay? It's 1 Thessalonians 4 is really talking about spiritual. If you look into the Greek for air, it could be for physical or spiritual. In all likelihood, it was referring to spiritual. Alrighty? Again, he said this generation not pass away until all be fulfilled. So everything had been fulfilled for that generation to pass away. If they did not, then it reduced Jesus to a false prophet. So if we look at this chart here, this is 70 AD, okay? And so this green line represents the Jews came to Christ, fled. They got out of the temple, and then you had your 1260 days, the prophecy by the two witnesses. Okay, so this is the period where Revelation 12 talk about the women, the place they for in the wilderness. Okay, that's all going on. It all went on here. Alrighty. And then just here, the 42-month tribulation that the Jews who denied Christ coming to flesh is from February 67 all the way to August 78. Okay, 42 months. And the 42-month persecution of Christians, that was from November 64 by Nero, starting with Nero, and then until Nero died with June 68 AD, so 42 months. Okay, so you're welcome to look at this at your own time. Download it. You shouldn't have had my permission. You just go up here after clicking on the link below description. You go to download, and you can download it, and you can actually do it even better. Okay, so I think that pretty much covers all that. So yeah, so I just went over everything in the Olivet Discourse, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, to talk about coming, and it never refers to touching the ground. And if it does mention anything about touching the ground, don't believe it. Okay? So it's very clear this is not a bodily return to the earth if you take a close look at it. So I encourage you to spend some time in this, and you'll see what I'm saying is true. Yeah, it doesn't say that he returns to the earth. It just says heaven and coming in the clouds, which is parallel to Acts 1, where he ascends in the clouds and he returns in light. He comes in like manner. We have to look at that from the Jewish perspective, right? So, and we have to look at from their history. What did how they understand it? Let's go back to this here. Alrighty. So you're welcome to look at that. So anyway, I hope that makes sense. There's not a single verse in the Olivet Discourse that suggests a bodily return, and yet when you got a Bible app, if you depending on what translation, like so Mass 24, my Bible app. New American Standard, it'll right before verse 29, it'll refer to glorious return. All right. I don't know if you can see that, if it's too bright or not, but it says glorious return. So what happens is they get this false idea in their head, planted in their head, and they bring it with them to Scripture. And it's like on steroids. One thing to hear it from the world of hearsay. It's another thing like you're actually reading and putting the title right on your screen. It's like, and you're guaranteed to superimpose this false idea into the text, and there's nothing in there. So anyway, this PDF here has a whole bunch of links, so you can see when things were fulfilled, whatnot. So you can see anytime the cursor turns to a hand, that's a link. Alrighty. So there's a whole bunch of links that helps us understand how the Jewish people understood their own conversation, just by simply comparing scripture to scripture. And with this topic, it's exhaustive. Okay. Just to give you a little brief, so you don't know me, I've been across the entire spectrum when it comes to eschatology, except I never held to this historic view. I never will. So obviously that's contrary. I take from a historicist perspective, I believe that once a prophecy is fulfilled, it's fulfilled. There's no double fulfillment, triple fulfillment, quadruple fulfillment, pentacle fulfillment, whatever. There's none of that. Once it's fulfilled, it's fulfilled. That does not mean that principles can't continue to apply. Okay. So the problem with the historic view, they're not studying the first century exhaustively. But part of the problem with the historicists, they believe that the book of Revelation was written in the 90s. They miss what happened in the 60s, and so they skip all that. And then that's that's kind of why they you stretch out the time indicators over thousands of years, whatnot, and it has no value to the original audience, 7 churches that it's written to. All right. So anyway, so hopefully you find this material helpful, based on comparing scripture to scripture and using outside paradigm only to verify scripture, not outside paradigm to interpret scripture. Big difference. All right. So anyway, hopefully you find this material helpful, and thank you very much, and have an awesome day.